A cold wind swept along the embankment, stirring the edges of Alexander Volkov's expensive coat. The city shimmered in the glow of neon signs and the echoing hum of evening traffic. He stood by his limousine staring at the lights, as if, for the first time in years, he allowed himself to simply stop. All his life, Alexander had chased time, business, empire, contracts, partners, numbers, reports, everything under control. But lately, something inside him had begun to falter. He started to notice that the house he returned to each night felt increasingly foreign. The spacious mansion, filled with art, crystal, and silence, was no longer a home. It was a set, a decoration where no one waited for him. That evening, he finished his meeting early. It was only 8 o'clock. Maybe I should have dinner at home, he thought. See what it's really like there now. The driver was surprised when he heard the command to head to the estate. Alexander rarely returned home before midnight. He liked the element of surprise, even for himself. The drive stretched through the sleeping suburbs, where behind every tall fence, secrets hid in silence. When the car stopped before the massive wrought-iron gates, he suddenly felt a strange unease. The house, the one he hadn't truly been in for a month, seemed to breathe with something new. "Open the gate yourself," he told the driver. "I want to walk." The wind carried the scent of wet pine and autumn earth. The silence was almost ringing, broken only by a distant barking dog. He climbed the steps slowly, took out the key, and turned it in the lock. The click was soft, familiar, yet instantly Alexander felt the presence of someone else. Not fear exactly, but the distinct awareness that another breath echoed his own. The light in the hall was on, dim, warm, but not the way he usually left it. There were faint, damp footprints on the marble floor, not dirty, but fresh, as if someone had just come in from outside. Alexander froze. His mind instinctively switched to analysis, the reflex of a businessman assessing risk. Who could it be? The security team knew he wouldn't return tonight. Housekeeper Maria left at 7. The gardener. He took a step forward. The floorboards under the carpet creaked softly. Then from deep inside the house came a faint metallic sound, something small falling and rolling across the floor. Suddenly, Maria appeared from around the corner. She stopped dead, eyes wide with fear, almost terror. She wasn't in her usual uniform, but in plain clothes, hair disheveled, clutching a flashlight. "Mr. Volkov," she whispered, her voice trembling as if she couldn't believe what she saw. "Good evening, Maria," he said calmly, though his insides turned to ice. "What are you doing here? Why aren't you home?" She rushed toward him, pressing a finger to her lips. "Please, don't speak." Not a word. Alexander froze, bewildered. She grabbed his hand. Her eyes glistened with terror. "If you make a sound, they'll hear you." He frowned, jaw tightening. "Who?" She shook her head, still holding his gaze. "Just trust me. Follow me." It was surreal. The owner of a business empire, a man feared by dozens of subordinates, now following his housekeeper like a child led through darkness. She moved quickly, silently, avoiding the creaky spots on the floor. "Don't step on the carpet," she whispered. "It's been moved." He obeyed, irritation mixed with anxiety in his chest. What the hell was going on? A faint rustle came from the living room. The woman tensed. "They're still here." Now he felt it too, the chill creeping up his neck. "Maria," he whispered. "Who are they?" She glanced toward the staircase. "Your alarm system was turned off. I came to close the upstairs windows and heard footsteps. Men. Not one, several. I hid behind the curtains and saw them come in through the side window from the garden. Why didn't you call the police?" "I tried," she whispered, "but one of them heard the click of my phone. I threw it into the laundry basket and pretended I was cleaning." Her voice trembled, but she stayed composed. "I thought they'd leave, but then I heard one say, 'Check the office. The safe should be there.'" Alexander felt the blood drain from his face. There really was a safe in his office, not just with money, but with documents that could never fall into the wrong hands. Maria carefully started up the stairs. "This way." "It's safer." He followed, each step echoing in his chest. Suddenly, a dull thud came from below. Something had fallen. The woman flinched but didn't stop. On the second floor, they slipped into a small service room. She closed the door and slid the bolt. "Breathe quietly," she whispered. "I saw their flashlights. I don't think they know you're home. If they hear us, it's over." He sat on the edge of the bed, fists clenched. It was surreal. A man of power, now a hostage in his own house. "Did you see their faces?" "Only silhouettes. Two, maybe three. One tall in a leather jacket, another wearing a baseball cap. They moved with confidence, not like random burglars." A memory flashed in his mind. 2 weeks ago, he had fired 3 employees from his security service for stealing fuel from his warehouse. One of them had threatened him over the phone. "It's them," he whispered. "They came back." Maria looked at him with fear. "What should we do?" "Wait," he said. "Let them think the house is empty. I'll call security." Quietly, he took out his phone but immediately realized the notification sound was on. Maria quickly grabbed it, turned off the sound and screen. "Careful," she whispered. "Even the vibration could give us away." She peeked through the gap in the curtains. "One is standing by the stairs, the other went into the living room." Alexander stepped closer. The faint smell of tobacco drifted up from below. He heard a whisper, "Check the office." Careful. The safe's behind the panel. He knew exactly which safe they meant. Those men had been inside before. They knew where to look. Maria clenched her jaw. "I shouldn't have stayed," she whispered, "but I couldn't leave knowing someone was in the house." He looked at her, and for the first time there was something new in his eyes. Respect. She wasn't just a housekeeper. She was someone brave enough to stand against fear alone. The sound of shattering glass echoed from below, followed by footsteps. Maria covered her mouth to stifle a scream. Alexander moved to the window and opened it a crack. Outside, beyond the fence, stood a car with its headlights off. "They have transport," he whispered. "They plan to leave fast." Seconds stretched endlessly. Then, silence. Footsteps below stopped, followed by the dull thud of a closing door. Maria slowly exhaled. "I think they're gone." "Don't rush," he said. "We'll wait 5 more minutes." Time dragged like cold honey. In those long moments, Alexander realized how strange it all was. A man used to viewing people as resources now felt genuine gratitude. When they finally stepped out of the room, the house felt foreign. The silence after fear was almost louder than the noise before it. He turned on the light in the hall. At that moment, Maria said softly, her voice trembling, "I was so afraid you'd walk in and call out to me." "They would have heard you. That's why I said, 'Don't speak.' I'm sorry if I frightened you." Alexander looked at her. "Frightened me?" "No, Maria, you saved me." He picked up his phone and called security. "Send a team immediately." No sirens. The house has been checked, but there may be signs of forced entry. He hung up and looked at the wet footprints on the floor and the flashlight Maria had dropped. "Tell me," he asked quietly. "You could have just left. Why did you stay?" She lowered her eyes. "Because this is my home too, Mr. Volkov. I've cleaned it for 10 years. I couldn't let them defile it." He nodded silently. In the distance, the low hum of a security vehicle grew louder. But something inside him had already changed. Not because of fear, but because, for the first time in years, he understood that trust isn't a luxury. It's what makes a house alive. The house sank into a heavy silence as the engine roared outside the gate. The warm light of the hall reflected off the marble tiles, but now that glow felt unfamiliar, as if the house itself hadn't yet realized that the danger had passed. Alexander stood motionless by the window, phone in hand, listening to the faint crunch of tires on gravel. Maria, still pale, clutched her chest, trying to calm her racing heart. "Are you sure they're gone?" she whispered, though she knew it was safe to speak aloud now. "No," he replied quietly, "but we'll find out soon." From behind the gate, a black SUV with the security company's logo rolled up. No sirens, just as he had ordered. Two security guards in bulletproof vests stepped out almost silently, moving with military precision. One nodded to Alexander through the glass, while the other pulled out a radio. "Don't open the door until I say so," Volkov told Maria. He knew that if the intruders were still inside, any premature noise could alert them. He opened a drawer in the cabinet and took out a small pistol that had been hidden there for years. He had never thought he would actually need to hold it. The cold metal seemed to bring back a sense of control. "Mr. Volkov," Maria's voice trembled, "do you know how to use a gun?" He gave a bitter half smile. "Once in the army, a long time ago." Then, a faint sound from below, a soft rustle, barely audible. Maria went pale, as if all the blood drained from her face. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. "Yes." He motioned for her to stay put. "Up here it's safe." He stepped toward the stair railing and peered down. In the warm glow of a table lamp, he could see the office door, slightly open, slowly. Alexander descended a few steps, holding the gun with both hands, just as he'd been taught. Below, a shadow flickered, a tall, hunched figure. A voice came from the darkness. "Faster! Where are the documents? He might come back." Alexander recognized that voice. Pavel Gromov, his former head of internal security, fired for theft and threats. His heart pounded so hard it hurt. He pressed a finger to his earpiece. One of them, Gromov, armed. "Careful." At that moment, the door creaked softly outside. The security guards entered the house, and everything happened in an instant. Footsteps, a short cry, a flash of light. "On the floor! Now!" one of the guards shouted. A dull thud, the crash of glass. Alexander rushed downstairs. In the corridor, a struggle. One intruder tried to slip through the back door but was tackled to the ground. The second, Gromov, stood by the safe, gripping a crowbar. He lifted his head and locked eyes with Volkov, grinning. "Well, look who's home, boss. Checking on your employees?" "You just made the worst mistake of your life," Alexander said quietly. "I don't think so," Gromov replied, stepping closer. "You owe me, Volkov, years of service. And what did I get? A kick and a few coins. You stole," Alexander said firmly. "And you threatened." "Yeah? And you've never betrayed anyone?" Gromov sneered. "Your whole business is built on betrayal. I'm just taking what's mine." The guard by the door moved slightly, but Gromov raised the crowbar menacingly. Then, a scream from upstairs. Maria. She couldn't bear the silence and had peeked down the staircase. Gromov spun toward her, and in that instant, everything could have ended in tragedy. Alexander fired. The bullet struck the wall beside Gromov, sending a burst of plaster into the air. Gromov flinched, dropping the crowbar. That was enough. The guards lunged, tackled him, and cuffed his wrists. Maria stood frozen, her hands pressed to her mouth, her shoulders trembling. Alexander walked up and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's over," she sobbed. "I thought he was going to shoot you." "So did I," he said with a tired smile. "But I guess my reflexes aren't so bad after all." One of the guards approached. "Mr. Volkov, we've detained both suspects." "There's a car outside the gate. No plates. Inside, a backpack with tools and a flash drive. Likely meant to steal data from the servers." Alexander nodded silently. None of it surprised him anymore. But as he looked at Maria, he realized what truly mattered. She stayed. An hour later, the police finished the report. The burglars were taken away, and the house fell silent again. Only the steady ticking of the clock in the office broke the quiet, calm and stubborn, as if nothing had happened. Maria sat on the edge of the sofa, her head bowed, twisting a crumpled handkerchief in her hands. Alexander poured her a glass of water and placed it beside her. "Drink," he said softly. "You've been saving my property and my sanity all evening." She tried to smile, but tears shimmered in her eyes. "I thought you'd be angry that I interfered." He sat down across from her. "Maria, do you realize that if it weren't for you, I might be standing here now without my documents, without my company, or worse? You didn't interfere. You acted. And you acted right." She lifted her gaze. "I was just scared. Not for the money, not for the house, for you. When I heard them say they knew where the safe was, I understood you were in danger." He paused for a moment, his expression softening. "Not even my business partners and the ones I've worked with for 20 years have ever worried about me. But you, my housekeeper, were the only person who thought about me, not yourself." Silence. Only the sound of rain outside. "You could have gone home," he said quietly, pretended you hadn't noticed anything. "I couldn't," she replied. "I know this house by heart, every corner, every creaking board. It's become like a living being to me. When danger entered it, I felt as if someone had attacked a loved one." He looked at her with a respect he didn't know he was capable of. "You're an extraordinary woman, Maria." She blushed and lowered her eyes. "I was just doing my job." "No," he said firmly. "A job is dusting furniture. What you did was make a choice. You risked yourself. That's not a job. That's an act of courage." He stood and walked to the window. The night was the same, yet somehow different. Alive, warm, filled with a strange sense of relief. "You know, Maria," he said without turning, "for years I believed the world ran on money, that fear could be bought with security and loyalty could be signed as a contract. But tonight, you proved me wrong." "I wasn't trying to prove anything," she said softly. "I just couldn't do otherwise." "That's exactly why you proved it," he replied. They both smiled, and for the first time that long evening, the smile was real. By morning, the mansion came to life again. The staff whispered quietly. Security strengthened the alarms. The phones rang non-stop. But Alexander seemed to exist in another reality. He sat in his office, staring at the restored safe. On the desk lay the police report. Gromov and his accomplices had confessed. They'd been after compromising documents to sell to competitors. Maria entered carefully, as always. "May I clean here?" "Yes, of course." He stood. "And thank you again." "No need," she smiled. "What matters is that it's all over." "On the contrary, Maria, it's only beginning." She looked puzzled. He took an envelope from the desk and handed it to her. "This is your bonus, and something else." She opened it and froze. Inside wasn't money, but an official appointment letter. House manager. "Me? A manager?" "You've earned more than just gratitude," he said. "I want you to oversee the staff, security, and the household. This is your home now, too." She slowly sat down, staring at the paper. Tears filled her eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Then don't," he said gently. "Sometimes silence is the most honest answer." They both laughed, truly, for the first time. That evening, as the sun set, Alexander walked into the garden. The air was fresh, scented with wet grass. He strolled down the path, thinking about how one night had changed everything. Not business, not contracts, not numbers, but a simple human act. He remembered how he'd entered the house that night, confident, cold, detached, and how he'd heard her words, "Don't speak. Say nothing." Words born of fear that had become the beginning of something much greater. Silence had saved his life and brought him understanding. A home, he realized, isn't made of marble or crystal, but of the people within it who are capable of kindness. He looked up at the windows on the second floor, where behind the curtains he saw Maria tending to the flowers. And for the first time in many years, Alexander Volkov felt it. Home isn't walls. Home is the people you can trust.